So as was mentioned, my name is Angie Peschel, Director of Curriculum. I've been with Mounds since 1998 and started as a classroom teacher, moved into the role of teacher leader, and been in this role as Director of Curriculum since 2013.
My name is Andrea Johnson, and I've been teaching in Mounds for 10 years. It's the only district that I've worked in. I started in Mounds as a kindergarten teacher, and then I moved to second grade, third grade, back to second grade. I've had the opportunity to serve on Building Operations Committee, as well as the Building Leadership Team. District-wide, I served on the Literacy Team, which we'll get more into later with our presentation.
Good morning, my name is Shannon Roney. I was a classroom teacher for 11 years in Brooklyn Center and in Mounds View. I spent 7 years also as a intervention teacher, and the last 5 years as a literacy coach in Mounds View.
Great. So this, you have access to the PowerPoint that we're going to share with you online, and then you also have it in your packet. We have made some adjustments and changes. We are a district of continuous improvement, so when these documents were printed, we've made some changes to them, so they'll be a little different, but what you see online will be current for that. So we are here today to share with you our journey around balanced literacy at the elementary level. And we're going to talk a lot about the what, and we're going to talk a lot about the how, but we really wanted to start with the importance of the why. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Simon Sinek and his golden circle, and really the why drives the how and the what of that work. So we have a video here that we share often in our district with our teacher leaders and our teachers and our administrators that really help show the importance of the why in our work. So we're going to start off with the video.
This is called How Do I Know? And a lot of times when people hear the phrase, how do I know, the next thing they say is what? How do I know what? But the key really isn't to know what, the key is to know why. Because when you know your why, you have options on what your what can be. For instance, my why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. My what is stand-up comedy. My what is writing books. My what can be going out with some friends to eat. In fact, another what that has moved me towards my why is a web series that we have out now called Break Time. So every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you should subscribe to the channel. We do a series called Break Time on YouTube. So 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode. One episode in particular, I'm about to show you a clip to. We were in Winston-Salem. So Break Time, this is how it works. I travel the country, I do stand-up comedy, probably an hour, hour and a half at an event. And in the middle of my show, I'll just sit down and start talking to the audience. And funny just happens. Or I'll meet somebody who's really interesting. So I met this one guy, and he said that he teaches music at a school. I was like, all right, you teach music, can you sing? And then I'm just gonna show you the clip. Check it. So you're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing, you know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
So here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or towards your purpose.
So our why in Mounds View is really about our equity promise. And so as all districts, we're all working on equity. It's a great idea. We should all be working towards it. So we don't just say it's a great idea. We make a promise to ourselves. We make a promise to our stakeholders, our students, our families, our community members. And there are 3 components to our equity promise, and they're listed up here for you. Programs and services in place to ensure that all schools, regardless of race, class, and disability, that won't predict student success, that students' academic performance does not fall into those patterns identifiable by those subgroups, and the school a student attends will not be a predictor of his or her success. So those are the 3 components that really provide the why for all of the work we do in Mounds View. I wanted to spend a little bit of time telling you about Mounds View and who we are as a district. We really are. We talk about being 2 districts in one, and we embrace that. And what I just want to show up on this with this slide is really the difference in demographics that really make that 3rd component, that a school a student attends will not be a predictor of his or her success. Because as you look at this graphic here, you can see the blue indicates the free and reduced students in our district. So we've got our east side and our west side. And you can see the differences in that demographic alone. And so with that, we embrace it. It creates some challenges for us. And so it's really something that we strive to look at with all that we do and really helps drive our why also. Teachers in the district, we have 870 teachers in our district. 374 of them are at the elementary level. And what's important about this, as you hear more about our journey around literacy, is that we have 118 of them are at 0 to 3 years experience. So as we talk about some of the things we've done in the past, these teachers haven't experienced that around some professional development. And 93 of them are fewer than 9 years experience. So 56% of our teachers are relatively new to our profession. So our journey, where have we been? So starting in, we were around before 2006, by the way, I just didn't want to go too far back. So 2006, at that time, we had a literacy framework in place. It was affectionately called the yellow document, not the green document. The green document was for math, but it was the yellow document that we had. And really that literacy framework was resource driven. It was based on Holt and Mifflin. At the time, we had balanced literacy training for teachers in our system. And in talking, I was in the classroom at the time, I'm at a middle school level, but in talking with people as we've gone through this journey, Mounds View is at the forefront of balanced literacy. I mean, when people would say balanced literacy, Mounds View had it going on at the time. But as you see in 2006, was the last time we offered any type of professional development around that. And as you look at the population of teachers that we have now and the years of experience, they didn't experience that. 2013, the Common Core came around and impacted everyone, right, as we looked at that. And we knew it was going to impact the system. We weren't sure how. And so we said, as we're looking at these standards and the level of rigor that exists here, we need to get some additional help here. And so hired a literacy coach. And that's when Shannon joined the team. As part of this work then from 2013 to 2015, we identified priority standards and benchmarks. And what we did with this process was, the Common Core standards, they're big, right? They're deep, there's a lot going on there. And while we cover all standards, we needed to prioritize standards across our system. This was especially true because of our promise, our equity promise, and making sure that a school a student attends is not a predictor of his or her success, and to give a common core to everybody across our system. So we brought teachers in and we took the Common Core standards and we said, what are the core standards that we're gonna prioritize? Teachers were already doing that across the system. They're taking all the standards, they're saying, this one is gonna be more important than this one. I'm gonna spend more time on this than this, based on really good professional judgment. But when every teacher is doing that independently, it creates misalignment within our system. So this was big work for us and helped us to get aligned with the focus of the work across the system. We've had district common assessments in place to give measures for a number of years at the time, since 2006 at least. There was a revision happening at this time to meet the Common Core. There always was a 90-minute expectation for literacy, but that didn't necessarily have to be in a block. So you could have, a little in the morning, a little after lunch, a little right before recess, so it wasn't chunked out. During this time, as we dug into the Common Core and began to understand it more, we realized that the framework that we had and the resource that we had were really not meeting the needs of the students, nor the rigor of the Common Core. And the capacity of our teachers really didn't meet the needs of our changing population. Balanced literacy was drifting. We had a new principal come into us, and she asked a question of Shannon and said, are we a balanced literacy district? And Shannon came to, well, right, we're balanced. Well, the fact that the principal doesn't know that, right, is asking that question, that's an indication that we need to do some work around that. So why District Management Council? I chose the image of the fire here for two reasons. So one of them is because it really created a spark for us, and another one is we were kind of a hot mess around literacy, in a good way. People were ready for change. So, and we had worked with District Management Council successfully in 2012, 2013 with our middle school, specifically around math. They had done some great things for us, really helped us to make some significant changes. So we'd had a relationship with them. Shannon was new to the central office. I came over new to the central office. We just started asking some questions that we couldn't answer, and so we thought we need to get, having DMC come in to help us answer some questions would be great, and it did provide us with some leverage. We had some ideas on what we wanted to do, what we thought would be best practice, but Shannon's been here for a while, I've been here in the district for a while, we needed to get some outside perspective, and DMC was able to provide that for us. A little bit more about context before we get into actually what DMC did for us and the results of that. So we had, as you know, the state came out with the new teacher appraisal system. And so as we were creating our plan, we didn't want to use the state's, we wanted to create our own. So as we were creating our plan for the new teacher appraisal system, that really is based on our professional learning communities. So we were having a shift in the work of our PLCs across the system. We had priority standards in place, and all of that really helped us to, that focus on professional learning communities helped us to make the changes necessary in a balanced literacy approach.
So as Angie mentioned, we moved into a cycle where we were using what we call PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act cycles as part of our evaluation system. And this really did shift the work that our grade level teams were doing. Our conversation stopped being so much around the what we were teaching as far as how the resource was working and what activities we were doing with the resource, to really unpacking the standards and taking a closer look at what do these standards mean and what does proficiency within these standards look like, which really lent itself to a balanced literacy reset. It allowed us to support one another as we were doing the reset, because not only was the work in the classrooms changing, but the work that our PLCs were doing around what we teach was changing quite a bit as well. So they kind of were able to coincide in that way. And like I said, it lent itself very well to a reset, because as we were having the conversations about what proficiency looked like, it became really clear that we would need to change our practice and adjust in order to meet the more rigorous standards. At the same time we started a reset with the literacy alignment team, it became pretty clear that we were going to need to have some district conversations around literacy, and a couple of things needed to happen. First, we needed to gather a team of teachers that was going to be able to bring a positive message about the changes that were going to happen in literacy out to the schools. And they were effective teachers in the classroom already that were starting to put some of the things into practice on their own, just based on their teacher instinct, but they were going to be available as kind of a bridge from what we had anticipated that the DMC might suggest to what was actually going to take place in the classroom, to the changes that would happen. And then within that team, we created a narrative, because like we mentioned at the beginning, we realized we needed a really compelling why. We needed to give teachers a reason why we were going to do a reset, and the narrative would allow us to all be on the same page about what our literacy priorities were and why we do the important work that we do around reading and literacy. And then finally, really important, we created a fixed and flexed framework. So that goes right along with the equity promise. It gave every teacher a really black and white picture of what things were absolutely expected within their 90-minute literacy block, and then what things were a little bit more flexible, what things that they could adjust based on their own professional instinct and what the specific needs of their students were.
Both of those documents are in your handout as well. We provided you with our narrative that we created, as well as the fixed and flex document, so it's in your packet.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that DMC took us through. As Andrea mentioned, we had done the work of identifying a literacy alignment team initially, and we did some pre-work around determining our narrative, our fixed and flexed, prior to the DMC coming in. Also, we knew they were going to have a really important role moving forward. One of the first things that DMC asked us to do was to determine the staff that would be included in our study. So we determined that we would include gen ed teachers, English language teachers. We have a role in our district called an instructional strategy facilitator. That's an ISF. That's the term we use. We have them at each of our sites, and that is a teacher on special assignment who is maybe a part-time teacher, and then they're doing other supportive roles at their site. It might include supporting PLCs with data, with testing, with strategies, that kind of thing. They're not a coach per se, but providing a lot of support, so we included them in our process. Intervention teachers and special education teachers. Also, the DMC interviewed district staff. They wanted to, the DMC was intentional about trying to find out the current reality from both perspectives. How's it going from central office staff perspective, and how is it going from classroom teacher perspective? So they interviewed district office staff and teacher leaders, and then they also interviewed those, they had a focus group at each school. And with the really wanting to determine how is the current reality understood by both, and is that the same understanding? The District Management Council also had us do did you skip a slide? No? Okay.
I think this one is.
Yeah, that's it.
It's
Okay.
Andrea.
Andrea, you're going to talk about
Yep.
that? Because you did that. Okay.
So in addition to the focus groups, they wanted to assess the current reality of each and every literacy block with teachers that were teaching literacy. So we did an email survey in which they asked us to break apart our literacy block in 5-minute intervals. And within that 5-minute intervals, they wanted to know more about what was the group size. Were we doing whole group, small group? Were we doing one-on-one or independent during that time? What resources were we using? Were we using curriculum-driven resources? At the time, we had a resource of Houghton Mifflin. Were we using resources that we had created on our own or found on our own? As well as what was the instructional focus, what were our objectives during that time, and where did we pull those objectives for? For many of us teachers in the district, it was the first time we were really asked to pull apart our literacy block, particularly, I mean, you're looking at a 90-minute block and we're pulling it apart in 5-minute intervals. And again, the purpose was really for the DMC to have a very detailed idea of what literacy looked like in each classroom. And as we'll get to, they were able then to compare so that we could see what is the alignment, what are teachers already doing that similar, and then where are the big differences.
So once the DMC had collected all of the data, the survey data, in which Andrea described, it was very detailed. They got a lot of great information about what was happening in classrooms, and then they took that information and combined it with the information from interviews and focus groups and district staff, and then they analyzed all that data, and they helped us answer questions that you see here. Our classroom practices aligned with best practices. Our practices align among classrooms and among sites. And with our equity promise, that's something that really drives everything we do. We really needed to look hard at that. We wanted to know what is working well and what needs to be refined. And do teachers really have the support and training and professional development that they need to execute effectively, especially with the rigor of the Common Core and our changing demographics. And then the DMC identified some potential opportunities as well as the financial impact, which their goal was for them to be cost neutral. So they gave us some commendations and some opportunities. We were excited. They gave us more commendations than they did opportunities, so that's always good. So the commendations after the whole study that they articulated to us, we were really excited to see the commendations because they were things that we had intentionally worked on. So to see them called out and recognized and affirmed for us was really important. It didn't happen by accident. They were things that we had been working on. Number one was that we had clear, rigorous grade level expectations and that our district had shifted to standards-based instruction. That was articulated clearly. I think it really spoke to our work with the priority standards work that we had done. Also that the district, the teachers really hold themselves accountable for student growth. They came across as very reflective of their own practice and really, really having that mindset that they really do want to have a significant impact on their students. And another commendation was that the district practices early identification of struggling readers, meaning early in their school year or early in their schooling, and that we do something about it, and that we're progress monitoring and checking for increased achievement with those students. Also, as Nate kind of spoke to this morning, our special education teachers were dual certified and in most cases spent the majority of their time actually working directly with students. And I think that was one thing he called out this morning. And also that the district's current literacy coach was valued by teachers across the district. Teachers were really reaching out for support, really asking for support and open to having that. So then when we looked at the opportunities, these are the things that we knew were going to be our things moving forward. To really, number one was to, because teachers articulated the support of the literacy coach being impactful and helpful, they wanted us to incorporate more of them, to expand the coaching in supporting teachers. It became clear that teachers needed more support and were open to that. One thing that really was called out to us, and this kind of spoke to some lack of alignment, was that it was very clear that there was a discrepancy in direct phonics instruction across our district. They captured minutes of time spent on phonics, and it was very much not equitable, both within a school, I mean, just across the same school. Minutes spent in classrooms varied greatly. And that spoke to our equity promise, and also we know if they're getting that much more phonics, what else aren't they getting that we know is important in a balanced literacy classroom? So they asked us to look hard at, to try to equal that, have that be equitable across the district, that all K2 students receive a minimum amount of phonics instruction, but also to look at need, right? That we're gonna meet the needs of students. It caused us to look hard at how are we articulating proficiency? What do we consider proficient in phonics? How much is enough? And what are we gonna do when kids need more? So we had to do a lot of work on that. And that is some work that we continue to work on even now. Also, it became clear that we needed to build on our teacher leaders and to continue to grow capacity in our sites to help give teachers more guidance. And so we did a lot of work starting with our literacy alignment team folks to support teachers in their literacy instruction, both with instructional practices and resources. And the last opportunity that was important was to align our, we did intervene early, which was a commendation for us. However, our entrance and exit criteria for students to be eligible for extra support varied greatly across our sites. We do a lot of things site-based in Mounds View, but recognizing that in order to meet our equity promise and to help all of our kids, we need to align the entrance and exit criteria along with some best practices for intervention and some ongoing professional learning for our intervention teachers.
They were all very important. That's why they're all number one. I don't know why that happened.
In no level, yeah. No order. So then we needed to respond to these opportunities. As we mentioned, we started our work with our literacy alignment team. That was intentional. We had built that team of who we saw to be highly effective teacher leaders at each site. We knew that they were going to bring forth the message and help us do our work. They also were our people who kind of got the ball rolling, so to speak, until we got we hired more literacy coaches to support that work as well. So they really started our work. One of our first tasks that we took on was we had identified our priority standards and our common assessments, but we wanted to align those standards. So what we did is we worked with our literacy alignment team to have, we call it our vertical alignment document. I'll show it to you in a minute, but it was just articulating which priority standards are explicitly taught and then assessed during which semesters to have some more alignment across our district with what's taught when. As we mentioned, we articulated our balanced literacy narrative. The literacy alignment team had taken the time to really think through what we want to say and articulate and what's fixed and what's flexed. But we needed the literacy alignment team to kind of bring that message forth to each site. We also did a lot of work identifying, teachers really expressed that they needed more guidance around core resources. They recognized that our old curriculum in Houghton Mifflin wasn't meeting the needs of their students, the Common Core, even they knew they didn't want to use it, they didn't know what else to use. And so we recognized that we needed to identify some great standards-based core resources and get them in the hands of teachers. We also needed to articulate and in some cases revise our district common assessments. Our Reading Well by Third Grade plan drives a lot of what we do with early literacy in grades K through 2. We have a lot of alignment across sites with that. We also have our district common assessments, which we used to call our benchmarks, now we call them our district common assessments, but we needed to revise some of those to articulate the vertical alignment document and the Common Core. So we revised those. We also wanted to make sure that as a team we had a means for the cross-district sharing of materials, ideas, and resources. That began with the literacy alignment team and has continued on with the literacy coaching team, of which I'm one, so I'm not the only literacy coach. We have a great team of 6, which is just amazing. We're doing some exciting work. We also, kind of to jumpstart our balanced literacy reset, because we had been doing balanced literacy all along, like Angie mentioned, we strayed away a little bit and we did not provide enough professional learning and support is what we came to notice. So we did an August Literacy Institute. It was kind of crazy. We did 2 full days of literacy professional learning in August before school started for all elementary teachers. So all of our elementary teachers, every one of them, came along with special education teachers and interventionists. So that was pretty cool to get kind of the excitement going, to really set the tone for our new trajectory, our new reset. We also, our big communication tool for all of our work ongoing in our reset is a website that we worked on. So we're going to try to show it to you very briefly. It has a bazillion things. We'll see if it's going to let us in here. I think so. Yeah. Oh. She just signs it. Okay. So we wanted one central place that people could go for all things literacy. And so we have a website that we use for that. And the literacy coaching team continues to work hard to add things to this work. And I would say that as we build teacher leaders in each site, the work is really done by them. So as mentioned, this is our Moundsview Elementary Literacy website. Everything lives here. This is you can see on our homepage is our framework, our narrative, what's fixed and flexed. We talked about the vertical, and this, you have that in your folder, so we won't go over that. We also have our vertical alignment document for our standards alignment. So if you were to click on each grade level, once again, it just articulates what are the priority standards, knowing that we teach all standards, but we have to make sure our focus is on those priority standards. It lays out what those standards are and then which semester they're formally taught and assessed, knowing that we cycle back around to them continually. The priority standards and resource document is one we continue to work on that we're pretty excited about. I mentioned that we did a lot of work around identifying standards-based resources, as that is one area that DMC really found that teachers were wanting some support in. So if you were to go, our teachers can go to their grade level, they click on their grade level, and you'll see that these are all the standards. If you click on a link, it will show you in our resources, it states the standard, and it talks about, we bought 3 big resources, and it shows where in those resources is support for that standard.
Nice.
Yeah.
So from a classroom teacher perspective, when we as the literacy alignment team brought the message back to the schools that the DMC is going to be doing this study and we're going to be taking a look at literacy, one of the first questions right away from fellow teachers was, will we get a new curriculum? Because like Shannon mentioned, they knew that Houghton Mifflin wasn't working for us and for our students, but there was a drive. There were teachers who just wanted a new curriculum. And it became very clear that that's not best practices, and in many situations, that's not the direction that districts are going. And we had known in Mounds View that's not where we were headed, even with the DMC. So we are wanting to be standards-based and also getting these new resources. It can be very overwhelming for teams to try to figure out, how do I continue to use standards-based practice with this brand new resource? And this document continues to be incredibly important in our work to make sure that we're making the most of these resources that the district has spent a lot of money on, while staying true to our commitment to being standards-based, and also staying true to the work that we did last year. So these resources came throughout this summer, and last year we had done a ton of work within our PLCs to reset how we taught literacy. We did a lot of work aligning the standards that we taught perhaps with writing, or how we were going to teach phonics within that, and we wanted to maintain the scope and sequences that we had created in our team. And because of this document, we're able to do that. We're not being asked to use this resource straight through from front to back. Instead, we're given options to pull out what we think is most valuable for our students, but it also allows us to stay aligned as a team.
I think that's really important that Andrea added that, because as if you know, some of our opportunity, or some of the commendations we received from the DMC was that we have highly reflective teachers who are doing great work. So for us as a team to come in and say, we're not doing anything well, you got to scrap everything you were doing, here's the answer, we're going to fix it for you, was not at all the message we wanted to send, right? So we wanted to provide some more support along with honoring the great work that they've been doing all along. And I think that was a really intentional act for us. So thanks for adding that, Andrea. So this is just one part of our website that is really, was called out by DMC to add a little bit more support for our teachers around resources. We have another tab, if you just scroll up. Yep. Phonics was a piece that they called out for us, and so we got to really thinking about, we need to articulate a clear scope and sequence and targets and proficiency levels. So we did the coaching team, it's a draft, we're continuing to really work towards what we include in phonics. Also, it was interesting because as the DMC collected information in that schedule that Andrea talked about, you never know really what you're capturing. So teachers put in their, when they say, oh, we're working on phonics for 20 minutes using this resource in a small group, we're capturing that teacher's understanding of what that means, right? So some of what we captured, we don't really know. We know there is misalignment, but what I view as this is my phonics activity might not be what you view as it, right? So we needed to articulate more clearly what we are calling phonics and word work. So we did a lot of work around word study in our district, and we articulated some of our things. Yep, if you just click on a link. So this has been a great resource for our teachers, again, to provide some support and alignment, but also honoring the work they've already done. So we laid out what are the expectations as articulated by the standards, by some other resources, by and so you can see we just kind of mapped it all out. That's been a great help and support for teachers. We also have, we had the Literacy Institute site on there, so people who, if they wanted to go back and capture all of our breakout sessions, we had 12 of them, they can go on those. So again, it's just a place where everything lives, and again, can be continued support. Oftentimes, I know for me, I learn a lot, and I know for our teachers, we had so many people say, and they want another Literacy Institute, and we will do another one, but they're saying, I wished we had the Literacy Institute a little bit later when I was really ready to hear it all and had done, you know how that is, right? And so sometimes it's nice for people to go back with fresh eyes and listen again and hear again. So all of our presentations are in there. We also have an intervention tab on our site, which continues to be some really strong work that we're working on as a coaching team to align not only our entrance and exit criteria for eligibility, but also around some best practices and PD that we're trying to do at each site.
So we wanted to talk just a little bit about what DMC helped us to do, what it helped us to better understand. And so, as Shannon mentioned, one of the commendations was around our focus on a standards-based system. That's really what we had been working on in the previous years. We were really making that shift, that people had an understanding when we said standards-based instruction, that we had a common understanding of what that meant and how that was different from being resource dependent. And so our focus work on that was impactful. So that what that told us as a team is when you focus on something, it makes a difference in the classroom with students, right? So we had some momentum going that way because this was big. I mean, the Literacy Institute was, 300 plus teachers in over 2 days and a brand new literacy coaching team. So we hired them and said, and by the way, your first job is to plan a literacy institute and these are the sessions. And so Shannon led that work brilliantly, mind you, and but it really brought them together as a team. They had to produce something together immediately. The feedback from teachers was incredible. As Shannon said, they want one every summer, which is a great problem to have. So when you can be intentional about something, it really does make a difference with the students, which is what we want to do. It also helped us to better understand the variation in our system. I mean, we knew we had some, different things going on across the system, but to really look at, we had phonics instruction everywhere from 1 minute to 100 minutes in a day in the same school, right? So that was like, okay, well, now we know, right? So now what do we do with that information? It helps us better understand that. We knew that balanced literacy, that this reset would require focus and professional development. Our teachers, we knew they were doing really great things with students. Our students, pretty high performing districts, our students are doing well. They could do better if we would get our alignment in place, right? And so we knew that would require some professional development. How could we support teachers in this shift that we were making? The importance of focus for the coaches. Shannon was one person and she was covering 8 buildings, right? And so that really came out in the study. She's too humble to say, but it really came out. It's like, we need more Shannons. So we got as close as we could to some more Shannons, and so now they're a great team working together. And then one thing that, if you're thinking about doing this came to us late, with thanks of our superintendent at the time, Dan Huberman. Hi, Dan. So, teachers were struggling. They were like, oh, wow, okay, so we get it. We have work to do, and we went to this Literacy Institute, and I've got a lot of shifts I need to make in my instruction with my students, and I can't shove this whole pizza in my mouth at the same time, right? So lots of stress, lots of like, how do I choose what I start with? And so we went back to the drawing board, probably was it October-ish? We went back to the drawing board and said, okay, here's an implementation guide, right? So this isn't gonna happen in 1 year, but in 3 years we want, this is where we wanna be. So created kind of a rubric, and it went across and up and down. So you could focus on one area of the balanced literacy approach and really get solid on that in 1 year, or you could do a little bit in each of the core components and get solid on those, and then the next year you'd move across. So this implementation guide, once we gave that to teachers, literally you could feel like the entire district, there was a sigh, right? Decompression across the district. So really would encourage you to do that first. That could have saved us a little. Right, Andrea? Right. So we want to talk about where we are now in our journey. So we're going to share with you some survey data from our teachers. We've got some teacher testimonials to share with you and some student reflections. And as we're continuing to look at our successes in the work that we're doing around balanced literacy, the questions we really ask is, has the work made a difference, and how do we know? Okay, has it made a difference, and how do we know? So we're going to share with you how we think it's made a difference and how we know.
So we had lots of ideas from a coaching team and from a curriculum team, and we felt really good about where some things were going, but we asked our teachers, which is who we should be asking, and we asked our students. So we did a survey in the spring of last year after our first full year, and we asked them to rate their level of understanding of balanced literacy from 1 year to the next. So about a third of our teachers were between 1 and 5 at the start, and then you can see that shifted greatly. How they would articulate their understanding of balanced literacy. Remembering, again, what Angie shared, that so many of our teachers were new. Our veteran teachers had some great balanced literacy PD, but that was 10 years ago. And so really building on that. I love this slide because this really impacted teacher practice. What we did a lot of professional learning about, teachers really did. This was just compared to past practice, which have they incorporated into their literacy instruction this year. And almost all of those those are big numbers, about 50%, most of them, using, really working on mini lessons, use of mentor text. All of the best practice sort of balanced literacy things that we had worked on with teachers had really, really used. So it really did impact our practice. Okay, there were and there were 168 responses in May, which is pretty big. We got a lot of response. Teachers had a lot to say, and we had great feedback. I mean, both constructive and super positive. I mean, it was really helpful for us as a leadership team. We asked a question, and I love this one. It really speaks because we know that our PLC structure is so important to everything that we do in Mounds View, and so this really, I think, speaks to some of the work that our PLCs have been working on. Their ability to unpack standards has increased tremendously. Their ability to write effective learning targets that are aligned to standards increased a lot. To be able to deliver specific literacy strategies aligned to targets, and to be able to establish success criteria for students. Most of that is PLC work that they're doing in their teams to stay aligned and really digging deep into those standards. So we were pretty excited to see that. This was great feedback for us from a leadership team, from a coaching team. How would you rate the following literacy PD opportunities this year? We did a lot at each site. Our institute was what's reflected first. We all do building level staff development, PLC support, and then seeing instruction modeled by the literacy coach. So really trying hard to look at what we're doing in buildings and how it's impacting teacher practice and their feeling of efficacy, trying to really build their capacity because we know that's the bottom line. I'm going to let Andrea speak to some of the testimonials.
So as Shannon mentioned, the bottom line, kind of on the district level, is teacher efficacy, and then as you know, when we move into the classroom, our bottom line is how are the students interpreting this change. And personally, my practice changed immensely in that I recognized that I'm transitioning to teaching students to be lifelong readers. They're building reading lives and they're building reading habits. And I just have a couple testimonials here of students that will kind of speak to how the practice has changed.
What's your name?
Mariah.
And what grade are you in?
Second.
Okay, Mariah, what do you spend most of your time doing when you're in reading class?
Reading.
Okay, and do you like that you spend most of your time reading?
Yes.
Why?
Because it feels like I'm learning more things.
Okay. Do you learn more things from the books that you read or because you're reading?
The books that I read.
Cool. Have you written any stop and jots in the book that you have right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you show us the cover of your book? Okay, and I see you've written a stop and jot right there on the cover.
Yeah.
Okay, why did you choose to write a stop and jot on the cover there?
Because I made it and I wonder, because there was a brand new book, and I wonder what happened.
And good readers, before they even read, start asking questions. What did you wonder after looking at the cover of that book?
I wonder if he put a magic spell on the carrots.
Have you started reading yet?
Yes.
And did you find out the answer to that question yet? Interesting. I'll have to read more to find out. Last thing, Mariah, how do you feel like you've grown as a reader so far this year?
Writing more stop and jots.
Okay, and how does that help you as a reader?
It really helps me understand what I'm reading in the book.
Cool. Thank you so much. All right, what's your name and what grade are you in?
Peyton, and I am in second grade.
Okay, Peyton. What do you spend most of your time doing when you're with me in reading class?
For one half I do reading, and then the other half, if I have any questions, I do some stop and jotting.
Okay, do you like having that much time to read and stop and jot?
Yeah.
Why do you like it?
I like it because sometimes when you get reading, sometimes when you read books, it gives you more answers when you keep reading and you have questions.
Sure. Have you written any stop and jots in that book that you can share with us today? Can you show us the cover of your book really quick? Okay, and then go ahead and share the stop and jot you've written.
Written this one on this page.
Okay.
I wonder what a toboggan is.
Okay. And what made you decide to write that stop and jot?
I decided that because I've been wondering, and maybe some other people might have the same question.
Sure.
So I decided to write that one.
How do you decide when it's time to write a stop and jot?
When I don't understand.
Sure. Awesome, thank you. Can you tell me a little bit, how have you grown as a reader in second grade?
I've been growing by reader by sometimes I stick with one book for a while, then I go to another book.
Sure, is that new for you to stick for one book for a while?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're being able to read a little bit longer books. Good. Are you reading more? Why?
So every day I read books. Every night I read books.
At home, and is that new? And what made you decide to start doing that?
Actually, I didn't decide to start doing that. My mom, everyone kept doing it.
So that's helping you grow as a reader a lot, huh? Okay, thank you.
I was hoping she would say she was so inspired by my reading instruction that she had started reading more at home, but her mom is helping to support us, which of course I appreciate as well. So again, the big shift that we're seeing from our students is that they're understanding how to read every book, not just the book that's in the basal or the book that we're teaching in guided reading. They're learning skills and strategies that will help them to effectively understand every book that they pick up. I do have a book club video on here, and if you do feel curious, feel free to watch it on your own. The sound isn't great. The biggest thing, I had been doing book clubs before we did the Balanced Literacy Reset, but they were very, not teacher-centered. The students were driving the book clubs, but I was giving a lot of prompts and a lot of jobs. And with the help of my literacy coach, I was able to put that more on the students, and our book clubs are now literally student-driven. They go with the stop and jots, and they write their constitution that drives the book club behaviors, and they sit and have conversations about books every 4 days a week for 12 to 15 minutes, and they're really engaging in intense conversations. I actually have a second grade student this year that we just had communication hours last week, and the parent came in and said, she started a book club in the neighborhood. I just want you to know that they're having a neighborhood book club now because of what you started. So really exciting, and it takes their level of excitement and engagement about books up a notch, which is what we're looking for. These are just some teacher testimonials, and I'm not going to lay out the whole thing. I'm just going to kind of pull out the important parts that you'll see here. Feel free to look in the PowerPoint if you want the specifics, but you're looking at teachers who are talking about individualizing their reading levels, high and rigorous mini lessons, and it's giving everyone the opportunity to see and hear high-level thinking, which we heard from in the opening presentation. Giving everyone access to that level of rigor is key in best practices. It did take a lot of time and energy for us to do this reset, but this teacher is here is saying that it's totally worth it because it's changing the culture in our classroom around reading. They know that kids are starting to understand that reading is really fun for them. This particular teacher talks about a huge shift for so many of us. We are going from being a teacher to a coach. We're coaching students how to be lifelong readers and not, like I said before, how to deal with one specific text or even one specific standard. We're giving them skills and strategies that promote lifelong reading. And then this one speaks to the feedback that she's able to give, and she feels like she's able to give more attention and individualized feedback to her students more now than she ever was before. This one talks a little bit more about their routine and how it's a student-driven block of time now. I think that we were being teacher-driven without even realizing that we were doing it. The reset helped us to recognize that we need to be using the student needs and best practices to drive how we spend that 90-minute block. So this particular teacher is talking about doing concise mini lessons. We now know as Mounds View teachers that best practice is to allow most of the students' time to work independently on the skill that we've taught or in small groups with focused instruction. So our whole group time has to be really concise but also rigorous. And then this one just talks about the opportunities to promote literacy in a bunch of different ways and a bunch of different subjects in the classroom. And again, speaking to the rigor of the learning opportunities that we're offering in our classrooms.
So where are we headed after this? We are continuing to work on the alignment, the vertical and horizontal alignment across our system, and also not only what's happening at the elementary level, but our elementary kids, guess where they're going? To the middle school level, and the experience around literacy is going to be very different for those students, and so we need to start prepping our middle school teachers for that and what that's going to look like and some shifts made at that level. We are in year 2 of the 3-year implementation, as I mentioned. We are continuing to focus on intervention and our needs around that and what that looks like across our system, and then the resources. So we didn't start with the resources, but we we're in year 2 with the resources. We're using Lucy Calkins' units of study, and so just helping teachers better understand how, in a standards-based system, how does this core resource supplement that? Our message around resources is always you use the resource that meets the needs of the students. So if this resource doesn't meet the needs of your students, reach out to your coach, reach out to central office, reach out to your ISFs in your building, find the resources that meet those needs. And here's a core resource you can go to that's research-based around that. So continuing to work with that. We've left 10 minutes for questions. So if you had any questions about anything, we'd be happy to entertain those at this time. Yes.
So I really appreciated your website, and a couple of things on there. Do you have videos on there as well? You do?
We do. So from the Literacy Institute one, all of the
Sorry,
videos.
repeat the question. Yeah.
Sure. So she asked about the website that we showed, and do we have videos? We do have videos that are aligned to our Literacy Institute. Also, I would say that most of the each individual school site, their coach does some videos in terms of if a small group instruction or mini lessons or interactive read aloud, and we have some. Each coach does that at their own site. So that one has just ones aligned to our institute at this point.
And do you ever track the hits that you get on there? Do you know how it's being used?
Do we track the hits on the website? No.
Well,
I don't think we do, but I don't know.
so the question is, do we track the hits on the website? So we track the hits on our big internal website,
Yeah.
but not the specific videos. We haven't gotten to that point. But
That
write that down.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yes.
So I'm going back to the beginning of the presentation, and I appreciate the context slide that talks about creating a narrative. Can you share a little bit more about what went into the why, creation of the why, and then who was involved?
Okay, so the question is about the creation of the narrative and the why, and Shannon really led that work, so I'm going to let her talk about how our literacy alignment team worked on that together.
So you mean our narrative for balanced literacy? We brought together a literacy alignment team. We did do some reading together around balanced literacy, and then we all worked for quite a big chunk of time. First, just kind of articulating our dream, our vision, what we want our classrooms to look like and feel like, what we value. We brought that together as a whole team. So there was probably, I'm going to say 15 of us doing that work, and then we wordsmithed it. So we really started with what's our dream? What do we want the Mounds View literacy experience to feel like and look like? What do we value? What do we want and we really spent a lot of time talking about real reading and authentic reading and what we want kids to be able to do when they leave us, and that drove most of our work.
And it was very clear when we did that work that even with a variety of teachers, grades K through 5, from different buildings, from different sides of the district, we were getting a lot of very cohesive responses. We literally did a post-it activity where we wrote down our dreams for the district and what we thought were best practices, and we were able to concretely sort them into 3 different categories. So our ideas about best practices in literacy that we each held true and the reading that we did were very much aligned. It was just about getting them on a document that would be accessible to all of the teachers.
I like that idea. I like the shared narrative. Because I can imagine as you're getting it out, and I've worked with scholars in busy specialized services, and I know a lot of times we're kind of forgotten or it has to come at the very end of the process. I'm just curious as to where did you include or how did you include your EL department or special education?
Yeah. So we have, in addition to the instructional strategies facilitators we mentioned earlier, we also have what are called guides, and they're like special ed leads in the, they share buildings, and so they were part of that process as well, and gave us feedback on that also, so they were included in that. Any other questions about where we're at now, how we got here?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of the aligning entrance and exit criteria for interventions across the district. Did you do the same thing with the coaching that went along with it as well? I'm curious to know what that looked like and who helped determine that.
The question is around exit and entrance criteria.
So is your question around how we aligned our criteria or more about the coaching?
The coaching.
Okay.
So who is the decision maker, and you're going to get coaching here, and then when does it start and when does it stop?
Everybody gets coaching, so we have a coach at every site. And yep, and so every site has a 0.5 coach. And we really align a lot of our professional learning. Our coaching team meets weekly, and we do a lot of continued learning together, and it is just the most amazing group of people. I get pretty they're just amazing. So we do a lot of learning together, and then we align. Our implementation guide that Angie spoke to really drives what we're doing PD around. There is some latitude that, like my principal, for example, this year we're really working on meeting the needs of our readers in small groups, whereas another site might be working on whole group, but it's all the same. I mean, we're all working from the same thing to align our practices. We plan our PD together. We're trying to really align our intervention strategies as well. So the coaches are heavily involved with our intervention teams at each school to align some of that PD and support.
And coaches are accessible in our district to any teacher who reaches out to them. It's not a designated, principals do not designate which staff members need particular coaching. Quite honestly, mostly what happens in my building is that teachers take a look at the implementation guide and they see, yes, where they need the most work and whether they need some specific coaching, or teams might look at it and see if they need the coach to come in and help talk them through points of that.
And I did want to mention one more thing. So when we decided to go with the coaching, that was one of the recommendations or opportunities from DMC. We were going to go down that route. I remember Dan Hooverman came to me and said, Nate Levinson, he wants to get us on a conference call. Like we had finished our study, we had our plan in place, and he's really wanting to get us in the room. He's got a couple things he wants to share with us. And one of the things he said was very important to share was, if you're going to implement coaches, you want to be sure that at each site that they are working with, that there are focused teams for them to work with, right? We would never say no to a teacher who reaches out, but there has to be very clear, we didn't want to kill the coaches, in other words, right? Because new implementation, new coaches to the system, we had to give them some level of focus. And Nate said, in their experience with the research they had done, if you don't do that to the coaches, it's not going to be a successful implementation of that. So I really valued that extra time you took to reach out to us and really say, and Nate didn't pay me to say this, I'm not trying to, right? It's not about that, but that was just really helpful, because had we not had that conversation, the coaches would have just gone in and just help everyone equally. Well, there are 0.5 in a building and the different levels, and so to really work closely with who needs that help right now, because we were PLC based, that made it, it's not one-on-one necessarily, it's more working with the team, building the capacity of the team. So that was really beneficial, and the coaches appreciated that too, knowing who their focus teams were. Yes?
Can you speak just for a minute to stop and jot? Just to explain it a little bit.
Kids love to stop and jot. Me too. Look, Andrea, she's like
So stopping and jotting is something that's new last year in our buildings. We incorporated it. And what it's really asking students to do is we coach them toward pulling their thoughts as they're reading. Whether they're reading fiction or nonfiction, we want them stopping every few pages and ask themselves, what's something I'm still wondering about? What's something I can infer about a character? What am I learning about the characters as I read? What do I need clarified? And students really do make a habit of stopping and jotting, not only in books where they're coached to do so, like in small group, but also in their own independent reading and even at home. We go through a lot of Post-it notes, so I would recommend reaching out, for Post-it note donations if that's the direction that you're looking to head. But it does really invest students more in their reading. And when I teach it to my students, I explain to them, when you get older and you're reading a lot of nonfiction books for college or in your career, you're going to need to really be processing what you read, and pulling the thoughts on your page is what good readers do. They're always stopping and making notes in the margins. They're underlining important parts, and we're just training them to do that from go so that it's built into their reading habits. Do you want to add anything?
No, I just think for kids, they think you read to get done. You just read to get done. It's a compliance act, and we want kids to be really reflective about their reading, that I'm reading for a reason, for a purpose. Even if it's for enjoyment, it's that I stop for a moment and I enjoy. So I stop and jot when I need to stop and jot, not because someone told me I need to stop and jot. So we're trying to work through the wrinkles with that too, but it's just a way to stop, pause, be in that moment and think about what I'm doing.
And for us as teachers as well, recognizing that a student becoming fluent, getting to that magic number, or being able to read the words on the page with prosody is not reading. It's a shift for everybody, including the students. I think oftentimes students have been given that magic number, and they think once I get to 90 words per minute, once I get to 118 words per minute, I'm a reader. And then they're going through the motions of reading. So this helps to bring some depth to their reading. And even our struggling readers are able to write Stop and Jots. They start in first grade and from the beginning of first grade. So it's an opportunity for them all to go a little bit more in depth with what they're reading.
Great, thank you so much. We have a 15-minute break. We want to thank you for that great presentation.